Good morning, everybody. If you just watched post number 11, we're moms, you know that I was going right into post number 12. And I don't have the post in front of me. I read it a couple of days ago, so I hope that I can keep the kind of gist of it. But I didn't want to read it because this is probably the most emotional of posts that I have, and I haven't recorded videos in over a week because I wasn't anxious to do this one. So please bear with me. But post number 12, I don't even remember what it was called, but ultimately we realized that we were not the family for these boys. So I touched on it in the last video, but very early on we realized that we were misled into what the needs of the kids that came into care at our house were. I mentioned in the last video that the older of the two boys was very violent. He was very aggressive. He would throw his toys so hard that it would dent the walls, and the color from the plastic would actually leave color on the walls. He just kicked and hit and bit and spit and just so much that within the first 7 days it was just under 30 bruises on my legs. He was kicking so much, and it became very clear that it was not safe for us to have both boys in the house at the same time without at least a third person, because even one-on-one supervision wasn't enough for having both boys in the house. So ultimately what we did very early on is we divided and conquered. We split the boys up, and I took the older boy and Mama A took the younger boy, and we kind of divided our day. So what this looked like is in the morning I got up real early. I got up an hour and a half, 2 hours earlier than I usually would, and I got myself ready, because the minute that the older boy got up, I brushed his teeth, got him dressed, and we walked out the door. We'd go drive around the park. We would go count light posts because he was obsessed with light bulbs. And we would just kind of drive around until I could take him to his daycare. Now, he had a problem going to daycare, so I would have to physically carry him in and then sit with him while he calmed down, and after about 15 minutes I would be able to leave. And we worked with the daycare on a couple of different strategies to help him be successful there. After the end of the day, I would Mama A would pick both of the boys up and then drive around until I got home. I would grab the older boy and we would go in the car. We would go to the park. We would go for a walk. We would go get dinner somewhere. Or we would stay home and Mama A would take the little boy and they would go somewhere. They would go out to dinner. They would go to the park, etc. And one of us would stay out of the house until the older boy was asleep. And then if we were at home until the older boy was asleep. Otherwise, we would come home when it was time to put the older boy to bed, and then we would collapse at the end of the day. While all of that was going on, Mama A worked with the little boy, and she got him ready and got him to daycare, and then at the end of the day just took care of him. So things were hard for us and we were frustrated. It was actually, I think, the second or third day, and Mama A had a breakdown. She just sobbed, and we were like, what did we do? We're not a treatment foster home. I think maybe that's what this post was called. We weren't a treatment foster home, which is ultimately a home for higher level of needs kids. we weren't a treatment foster home. We were a brand new foster home. We were brand new foster parents, and we ended up with these kids that were higher level of needs than we had, and were not safe together, and we were just crying. Well, within the first 7 days of a child emergency detainment, there has to be a sit-down meeting, and that's when the case gets transferred to the agency. And we went to this meeting, and we were just beaten down. I remember the day, like, we both took the day off of work, and we were just exhausted. And we went there, and that's when we found out that no, the person who took the boys into care knew about the behaviors. Not only did they know that the older boy had the behaviors that he had, but it was a main part of the story, and they didn't tell us, and they intentionally didn't tell us because they wanted the little boy placed. And at that point, we were just like, we can't do this. We're not the home for these children. And like, just the violence, and we were just stressed out all the time, and we had kept asking for help, and nobody was giving it. And it was almost like we were being treated like we didn't know what we were talking about, and we were over exaggerating things, and things were kind of a mess, and whatever. So at that meeting, we officially gave our notice, and you can give notice to have kids moved, and it's usually a 30-day notice. So that was the day that we officially gave notice on the boys. So there was a visit with the boys' biological mom, and like I said, our caseworker didn't believe what we were telling them, and she was bringing the little boy back to our house from a visit, and he was throwing a fit in the back seat, which we weren't surprised about, and he was hitting himself so badly he gave himself a bloody nose in the back seat of her car, and it was so bad, and that it was just, there was blood everywhere. And she called me, and she's like, oh my God, like, what do? I've never seen a kid act this way. And I said, get down at his level and offer him a hug. And she's like, I don't want to do that. There's blood, and he is just, he's freaking out. And I'm like, I understand, but you need to get down at his level and offer him a hug. And she did, and it worked. And she apologized profusely. She's like, I'm so sorry. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't understand. Pretty much admitted, I thought you were new foster parents and you were exaggerating. She's like, I've never seen a kid of this age behave in this way. I didn't even think it was a possibility. And she's like, we're going to do what we can to find him a home that can care for his needs. So you put in 30 days notice, but like, things were an emergency, and we're like, we need help. So the boys were put into, well, not the boys, the older boy was put into respite on the weekends, which is like state funded babysitting. And they found like treatment respite homes, and each home within the first couple of hours would call and say, we're going to make it work for the rest of the weekend, but you can never call us again. And it was hearing these stories of these respite providers who literally just taken these kids, saying that we can't care for this kid for a couple of hours, let alone a weekend. multiple times. It was really hard. And because they were being more honest, because they didn't want to move multiple times, it was taking a really long time. And it was getting harder and harder. And ultimately what happened was they had found a home, but they needed time and whatever, so it was going to be another week. And we went to a car dealership, and he started freaking out in the car, and I took his shoes off so he could kick and kind of do whatever, and he could not calm down. And I didn't have it in me anymore. And I just stood outside of my car with the door open. I just stood outside of my car, and I let him kick and scream and kind of tried to just let him tire himself out. And I just cried. I cried in a way that I don't think I'd ever cried before. And I was just exhausted, and I didn't have it in me anymore. And I didn't know what to do. And I called Mama A, and I'm like, I can't do this anymore. I don't know if I want to be a foster parent anymore. I don't think I'm good at this. And she came and got in the car, and we just drove around for an hour while I calmed myself down. And she called the emergency on-call number and said that we can't do this anymore, that they have to get it figured out, that at this point they had decided to split the boys up because they had seen the violence towards each other. And they're like, okay, well, we're gonna situate it. They're gonna go to that house, and everything will be okay. Like, just get through the day, just get through the night, and then we'll get them there. So obviously, 2 years later, I feel deeply for these kids, because there's a saying that goes around that, foster parents don't have to be protected from, connecting with these children. These children deserve all of the connection that you can give them. And that's absolutely true. Like, if we had been, even at this point in our fostering journey, and we were with an agency that was willing to support and help us and guide us through it, we maybe would have been able to stick it out longer and be a better home for them. But being brand new foster parents, we had only been licensed for maybe a couple of weeks. We were not situated. So our first placement ended up not so great. Both kids ended up being moved. I'll go into why the younger kid was moved, which is also a devastating story, for another day. But just know, I know I've got a lot of videos to get through where we're at in our fostering journey today, but just know that we didn't give up. We gave up with the agency we were with and decided that we needed more support. And we're still foster parents a number of years later, and we have different kids, and we even have a challenging kiddo, but things are much better. So things started off pretty rough, but there is a happy ending to our story. So thank you very much for watching. If you're enjoying, please share. Please subscribe to our channel so you get all of our updates. And as always, thank you very much for watching.